Got a call about 3:15 in the morning, and those are the kinds of calls you never want. Nothing ever good comes up at 3:15 in the morning.
My truck's caught on fire. You're gonna have to come, fire trucks are gonna have to come southbound going northbound because the truck's on fire on the bridge.
There had been a crash on the Brent Spence Bridge. There was a major fire, and they did not know the extent.
It looks bad. I mean, you see fire like that on this kind of structure, it's very concerning.
I walked back in and turned on the light and told my wife that the Brent Spence Bridge was on fire. I had to go to work.
Initially, we were responding to a single commercial motor vehicle crash. While we were responding to that event and coordinating efforts and collecting information, we were notified that there was a secondary event that occurred actually on the span of the bridge over the river.
Part of the Brent Spence Bridge burns overnight. Now crews are trying to clean up the mess, and drivers are dealing with the traffic nightmare.
A 300 to 400 gallon diesel spill is what the majority of the high intensity heat was from the fire.
The scars from this morning's crash and fire on the northbound lanes of the Brent Spence Bridge will likely remain visible for a long time. It's what those scars tell inspectors that will determine just how long the bridge will have to remain closed.
Realizing that we were going to have to do an immediate inspection, I called our central office folks and alerted them to get our structural engineers available to come in to inspect the bridge as soon as possible. Now that couldn't be done until, number one, the fire was out and the debris was clean. You know, that was a 10 to 12 hour process just to get the debris off the bridge for us to be able to get close enough to do any type of inspection.
Kentucky Transportation Secretary Jim Gray expressed confidence in the nearly 60-year-old bridge itself.
It's very important that the public knows that this is a safe bridge and that we work vigorously to ensure that any bridge that's crossed by the public is safe.
The bridge is extremely safe. It was not built for 160,000 cars a day, but that's the repetition, that's the congestion, that's not the durability of the strength.
With 8 lanes of traffic, 4 in each direction, the Brent Spence Bridge has carried a lot of traffic between Covington and Cincinnati for nearly 60 years.
This is a very important bridge, not just for the region, but for the nation. And we are committed, fully committed, to getting it back into service.
The I-71, I-75 corridor is part of the lifeblood of commerce. So we knew when this crash occurred, we had to act quickly.
When the governor and I spoke on Wednesday before the press conference, he made real clear a mission. He said, Jim, we want to get this job done and we want to get it done quickly, but it's got to be done safely. And that became a touchstone for the entire project for the next 40 days. Inspections had to occur, and these inspectors were climbing and combing this bridge for the 3 days after the fire.
I called in about 20 to 30 bridge inspection personnel. You know, it's a big bridge. The fire damage was constrained to a certain area, but having that many personnel and qualified personnel, that led us to a quick turnaround to get that inspection done and performed and see what actually was damaged and what needed to be fixed.
What we were doing was core drilling some of the steel sections and the concrete to determine the extent of the damage. A visual inspection of one of the core samples suggested to the inspectors that it might have been brittle.
Specifically with steel, after it reaches a certain temperature, the physical properties of the steel and actually the crystalline structure of the steel will change.
They drove the sample to the laboratory in Louisville.
We can look under a microscope and see, did the physical properties change that would affect the strength of the bridge, that would affect the toughness of the bridge?
The steel did not get hot enough to change the chemical composition to make it brittle. So we was all jumping up for joy there.
And that was the first step, right? Is there a global problem? Fortunately, the main truss members were far enough away from the fire or shielded by the concrete. Concrete's an excellent insulator and greatly reduces the amount of heat, you know, that's going through. That's why the lower deck, while it was the location of the fire, actually had less damage and had less work and repairs that had to be done. The upper deck, which was directly above the fire, was not insulated by the concrete deck, and all that fire got into those.
The damage to the upper deck was to the stringers, the metal beams that run under the concrete deck. They were warped, and it caused the upper deck to actually be displaced.
So the first thing we did was we sourced these steel beams from 4 different mills in the country.
The time component is the lead time on material. Contractors got to order the material and get it on site in 37 days and also do that work.
And so by going through all that process, we said, this is the actual area of damage. And once we can establish that, then the designers in the office can start developing plans, writing out specifications, and saying, contractor, you need to replace from here to here. Bolts need to be located here to here. That information can then go to a fabricator who, drills the holes and gets it to the field, and all of a sudden you show up in the field and it fits up and it works the way it's supposed to.
The contractors visited the site to examine the site on Saturday and Sunday, and they gave us a price on Monday morning. We're doing all of this on parallel tracks. The objective was, yes, to get the bridge reopened and get it done quickly and get it done safely, but also not wastefully.
Now, the bridge is still closed tonight and is expected to remain closed for the foreseeable future, and we don't know how long that's going to be.
Right now, the other bridges are having to shoulder the load the Brent Spence Bridge usually handles. With it closed, we see a significant amount of traffic on Clay Wade Bailey Bridge and the Roebling Suspension Bridge Wednesday night as cars made their way around the closure.
It was important for people to know they needed to prepare for disruption, but that we were going to move heaven and earth to get this thing done as fast as we could.
One thing people don't understand with a lot of our projects are the traffic control is a major part of a project. If this were a scheduled project that we were going to replace a portion of the deck on the Brent Spence Bridge, we would have taken months to determine the traffic patterns and how that would have worked. We had hours. We talk about the 160,000 cars that use the bridge. Those 160,000 cars went somewhere else. And we don't have another bridge that'll carry that type of traffic.
We had contacted Bob Yeager, our chief district engineer from the State Highway Department, and he helped us coordinate state resources to get out there with directional signage, crash trucks, and they get out there and helped us facilitate the detour around the 275, 471 corridor.
I actually say there were 3 projects in my mind. There was the bridge inspection and repair project, there was a traffic maintenance project, and there was the communications project.
Obviously, when we're giving the public information, they want to know what's going on from the construction aspect, as well as where the maintenance of traffic, where the detours are going to be in place. And my role was to kind of oversee all 3 of those and make sure that information was shared not only among, but between each of the groups so that we could coordinate them.
The Brent Spence Bridge is such a nationally prevalent bridge. There were people even beyond the local area that needed to know what was going on. We established a dedicated website and made an effort to put out consistent visual content so that people would know what exactly was happening on the bridge. They could track along with us, and they needed to know how else to keep crossing the Ohio River.
The time constraints on this project and the pressure to meet those constraints are not like any of the project I've been on. Usually projects I'm on that are large projects, you've got at least a construction season, but this one we didn't have that amount of time. You had 37 days.
It wasn't a complex project, but the conditions were complex. The removal of roughly 8,000 square feet of concrete, removal of these steel beams, the replacement of them, the replacement of the barrier walls, but it was under a very constrained, very demanding schedule on a tough site, and you've got to know what you're doing.
Also we're doing this in the middle of November, early December. Of those 37 days, you're kind of banking on losing a good portion of those days this time of year to weather. I think we just got really fortunate, and So things worked out really well and played to our favor and the contractor's favor for the timeline that we had set. And that's why we were able to finish a day early.
What impressed me the most was the expediency and the effort and the cooperation that we got at all levels. Working with two states to try to get something done would typically take, at least a few conversations. Everybody was on board, not asking why, but how. How can I help?
I mean, obviously the project is expedited, but it wasn't rushed in the sense that we cut anything. I mean, we did everything per specs. We did everything per the plans. Once they got the material, it was just a matter of how many people and how much equipment can you throw at it to meet your schedule.
Throughout the construction process, a lot of people that are saying, well, I'm never going to drive across that bridge. I didn't trust it before. I'm not going to trust it now. I think if the structural integrity of that bridge was ever proven, it was during this event, because they went in and basically surgically removed the damaged portion of the upper deck of that bridge, and the rest of the structure remained intact and stood there. It was very obviously very structurally sound.
I think it came out loud and clear that they wanted to make sure that this was going to be done safely, that we weren't going to cut corners, that everything we did had to be done right. And what we wanted to make sure is that we turned a structurally sound bridge back to the public before any of us would consider the project complete.
When it got to the end of the project, we had to do a final safety inspection. Looking over every aspect of what the contractor had done, did they meet the intent of our specifications? KYTC had a great group of inspectors that spent every day out there with them, watching them and monitoring every step of the way.
It's not like we come in behind them and like you think of an electrical inspector or somebody, when you're building a house, they come in behind you and check a bunch of boxes. We basically stand over their shoulder while they're doing the work and verify that it's being done according to our plans and specifications, which is even more important for a project like this because there's not that time to come in behind the contractor and say, oh, by the way, you didn't make this huge piece of metal right.
They provided a good product and again, replaced the components that were not safe to be remaining intact and put the bridge back to where it was, before the fire happened.
Getting out and being on the bridge gives you a whole different view on the safety and the strength of the bridge. I mean, you see the steel members and everything that are part of the bridge, and I mean, that thing's not going anywhere. It's stout. You can't really see that, like I said, driving by at 60 miles an hour.
So one of the things that was unique about doing this type of project in the midst of COVID is that it really did impact how we communicated. We did weekly virtual press briefings. Thanks to technology, we were able to continue to engage folks and keep them updated. We just did it virtually.
There was a ton of partnerships, collaboration. Some of those we were able to do face-to-face, but given the time that we were in, I think we're all used to being able to handle more of that coordination remotely or virtually.
As we managed the crisis, we were also learning that you simply cannot over-communicate. That influenced us internally in the project management of the bridge repair itself, in the management of traffic, and then in the communications model as well, the communications project.
We were surprised by the response that we got opening day. People really appreciated the work that was done. It was more than just getting a bridge back open, but I think they really appreciated the people and the sacrifice that it took to get it open early and that it was going to be safe.
To know that it could happen and come together successfully, get the traveling public back out there, it's very rewarding.
Thinking about all of the things that we were able to accomplish in 6 weeks, all of that's kind of replaying in your mind as you drive through it. And like I said, just a relief that this is real. Like it really happened. We were able to get it accomplished, and pride.
That bridge was put back better than the way it was built. Higher strength concrete was used in the deck than what was used in the 60s when it was built. Higher strength steel was used in the stringers. That alone makes the structure even safer and will last even longer.
The plans for the Brent Spence are not to remove the current Brent Spence, but to build a companion bridge to the west. It needs some relief, but it's really a capacity issue. And this bridge can be properly maintained. This bridge is with us for a very long time.
This project on one of the most important arteries for transportation in America, we came through under budget and ahead of schedule.
Felt good to watch other people drive over it, really. I mean, that was when we finally felt like we'd accomplished something, when everybody just started driving over it like nothing had ever happened. And you put so much time and effort into a project like this, and then the public gets on it, and I mean, it just becomes normal. I'll remember this my entire career. Yeah, it's the Brent Spence Bridge, so you remember that.